prices go up?
Excuse me, we haven't asked you to speak yet, please. Right? Okay. Go ahead, please.
You won the White
Go
House
ahead.
in part.
Go ahead, please.
Mr. President, you are meeting Prime Minister Modi of India this
Yes.
afternoon. What kind of trade and tariff relations would you like to have with India, and what's the vision for India-US?
Yeah, India traditionally is the highest, just about the highest tariffed country. They charge more tariffs than any other country. And, I mean, we'll be talking about that. But, again, whatever they charge us, we're charging them. So it works out very well. It's a beautiful, simple system. And we don't have to worry about, gee, we're charging too much or too little. But traditionally, India is right at the top of the pack, pretty much. There are a couple of smaller countries that are actually more. But India is a they charge tremendous tariffs. I remember when Harley-Davidson couldn't sell their motorbikes into India because of the fact that India, the tax was so high, the tariff was so high. And Harley was forced to build, I guess they built, I don't know, that was a while ago, but I think they built a factory in India in order to avoid paying the tariffs. And that's what people can do with us. They can build a factory here, a plant or whatever it might be here, and that includes the medical, that includes cars, that includes chips and semiconductors, that includes everything. If you build here, you have no tariffs whatsoever. And I think that's what's going to happen. I think our country is going to be flooded with jobs.
What should consumers expect? Are prices going to go up short-term,
Well,
long-term?
not necessarily. I mean, not necessarily, but I'll tell you what will go up is jobs. The jobs will go up tremendously. We're going to have great jobs for everybody. This is something that should have been done many years ago. China did it. I mean, China did it at a level that probably nobody's ever seen before. If you manufactured a car, you couldn't send it into China. The tariff was so high, so everybody went and they built in China. It was no big secret. So we're going to see, but it's going to mean tremendous amounts of jobs. And ultimately, prices will stay the same, go down. But we're going to have a very dynamic country.
But if prices go up, Mr. President, because of these tariffs, who do you think voters should hold responsible?
Oh, I think what's going to go up is jobs are going to go up. And prices could go up somewhat short term, but prices will also go down. And I think the farmers are going to be helped by this very much because product is being dumped into our country and our farmers are getting hurt very badly by the last administration. The last administration hated our farmers, like at a level that I've never seen before. I think our farmers are going to be helped. Jobs are going to be helped, but our farmers are going to be helped. Our manufacturers are going to be helped. And again, if somebody wants to come in, including the car companies, if they want to come in and build car plants, they'll do it without tariffs, and therefore prices won't go up. There could be some short-term disturbance, but long-term, it's gonna make our country a fortune.
So Americans should prepare for some short-term pain.
No, you said that. I didn't say that. You know?
Because if the prices go up,
Let's see what happens. Nobody really knows what is going to happen other than we know that jobs are going to be produced at levels that we haven't seen before. We know that we think interest rates are going to ultimately be coming down because of things that happen, and they go hand in hand with the tariffs. But we think that the prices for some things, many things, it could be all things, will go down. Ultimately, will go down.
Mr. President, can you explain the timeline here, sir? There's a period of time for a review, a report, 180 days. Sure. What's the earliest date that you think tariffs will actually be implemented and executed?
Well, I would say maybe I'll ask Howard to answer that because he's going to be the one that's implementing. What do you think?
Our studies should be all complete by April 1st. So we'll hand the president the opportunity to start on April 2nd if he wants. So I think we'll be ready to go on April 1st, and we'll hand it to the president, and he'll make his decisions. But remember, if they drop their tariffs, prices for Americans are coming down. Our production's going up, and our costs are going down. Remember, it's a two-way street. That's why it's called reciprocal.
Have you spoken to any American CEOs directly about this? Are they calling you and asking for
I've spoken to many, and many love it. And they say this is going to be the thing that makes our country really prosperous again. And this is going to be what pays down to $36 trillion in debt and all the other things. And this is going to be This is an amazing day. I think this is going to be a very big day and in a very positive way for our country. Yes, please.
Mr. President, you've talked about the VAT and the EU before and your concerns with how the EU treats you. Do you have a number in mind on the European Union? Do you have an idea of where that number is going to land?
Well, what they are now is they have a 20% VAT tax, which we're considering to be similar or the same as the tariff. Plus, they charge lots of fees. And, you know, they're doing something else. European Union's been very tough on our companies. They sued Apple, they sued Google, they sued Facebook, they sued many other companies, and they're American companies, and the kind of numbers are staggering. And the court system over there is not very good to our companies. If you know that Apple had to pay, I think, $16 billion in a penalty, a court case that was really shocking because most people thought they would have won that court case, people that watched it. So they've been very tough. Airlines have called me up and they said, could you help us with Europe because they're charging us so many different fees. I got a call from the head of American, United, and other airlines saying every time we land a plane, we get just absolutely killed by the European Union. And so they haven't been treated as good. You know, we think the European Union is wonderful. We all love Europe, love the countries in Europe, but European Union has been absolutely brutal on trade. Canada's been very bad to us on trade, but now Canada's going to have to start paying up. And Canada's been tough on the military because they have a very low military cost. They think we're going to, you know, protect them with our military, which is unfair. So Canada's going to be a very interesting situation because, you know, we just don't need their product. And yet they survive off the fact that we do 95% of what they do. And Canada is just absolutely, I say it, and sometimes people smile and sometimes they say great idea, but Canada, their taxes would come down greatly, their security would go up greatly. Amazing things happen to Canada, and really Canada in this particular, why would we pay $200 billion a year in subsidies to Canada when they're not a state? You do that for a state, but you don't do that for somebody else's country. So I think Canada is going to be a very serious contender to be our 51st state.
Mr. President, how are the negotiations going with Canada? There was obviously a delay in implementing those tariffs.
I spoke to Governor Trudeau on numerous occasions, and we'll see what happens. But it just sets up so good for them. Look, the people would pay much less tax than they're paying right now. They'd have perfect military protection. They don't have any military protection because and you take a look at what's going on out there. You have Russian ships, you have China ships, you have Chinese ships, you have a lot of ships out there, and you know, people are in danger. This is a different world today. It's a different world. They need our protection.
You
Yes.
just mentioned Elon Musk and the efforts that he's undertaking with your
Yeah.
authority. You granted him new authority this week. Will he secure any new government contracts while he is working on DOGE?
No,
for
not
you?
if there's a conflict. If there's no conflict, I guess what difference does it make? But we won't let him do anything having to do with the conflict.
Are you personally checking to make sure there's no conflicts of interest?
Yeah, I am.
He answers to you.
Sure, he does. First of all, he wouldn't do it, and second of all, we're not going to let him do anything where there's a conflict of interest.
Mr. President, your negotiations with the EU are there's discussions ongoing already. How quickly do you expect that you'll hear back from them about any of these other measures?
I can't tell you, yeah. The EU's been very nasty. It's just been, they haven't treated us properly. Look, we were great to them on NATO. Essentially, it's a similar group of countries. When I came in, my first term, I raised their fees. I mean, they were not paying. We were paying for, in my opinion, almost all of NATO. And now, you know, I had the bad moment with the press where the press said, well, does this mean you won't protect them? And I said, I won't protect them if they're not paying. But because I said that, the Secretary General, as you know, said it was the greatest thing he's ever seen because the money came pouring in. But they don't treat us right on trade. They don't treat us right on the military either. I mean, if you look at Ukraine, we're in for probably $200 billion more than Europe. Why are we in for more than Europe? We're in for more than Europe. I mean, think of it, or NATO. I mean, let's call it NATO because Canada's in. By the way, Canada is just about the lowest payer. Also, they shouldn't be. They are just about the lowest payer in NATO, in addition to everything else. So Canada's really been taken advantage of. And if they had to pay just something modestly fair, they wouldn't be able to succeed as a country. And that's why I feel they have to become a state. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you,
very
Mr. President.
critical of-
Is it your expectation that partners will offer major concessions and that you actually don't end up applying those tariffs?
No, I think that a lot of them will stay the same, and whatever they pay, I'll pay. I mean, we'll have a lot of them stay the same. I think some, look, I heard they, as an example, EU lowered their tax on cars down to the exact same amount that they were much higher. They were approximately 5 times higher, and they lowered them down to the exact tax that we're charging. That took place like yesterday or the day before. Is that a correct statement? I think so, yeah.
Do you expect any exemptions or waivers?
I don't expect that, no. This is a simple system. I mean, there wouldn't be any. And in the case of Apple, I gave them a waiver, an exemption in my first term because Samsung was in South Korea. And Samsung didn't have to pay the tax because it was a tax on China. And Apple makes a lot of their product in China. So I did that because it wouldn't have been fair. But now this applies to everybody across the board. This is a much simpler way of doing it, much better way.
You had that major call yesterday with President Putin of
Yeah.
Russia. President Zelensky responded today basically saying any agreements they won't accept unless they're made with Ukraine. Will Ukraine have a seat at that table for those
Of
negotiations?
course they would. I mean, they're part of it. We would have Ukraine, we'd have Russia, and we'll have other people involved too. A lot of people, a lot of forks in the, a lot of forks in this game. I'll tell you what, this is a very interesting situation, but the Ukraine war has to end. The young people are being killed at levels that nobody's seen since World War II, and it's a ridiculous war, and it has to end. We had a good talk with President Putin. I had a good talk with President Zelensky, very good talk. And somebody said, oh, I should have called Zelensky first. I don't think so. I mean, we have to find out whether or not Russia wants to make a deal. I know that Zelensky wants to make a deal because he told me that, but I now know that Russia wants to make a deal.
Did you ask Secretary Hegseth to walk back his comments yesterday saying Ukraine won't join NATO and won't go back to pre-2014
No,
borders because
no,
those
I
are
didn't, no.
bargaining chips you could use?
No, I didn't. Somebody told me to, but I thought his comments were good yesterday, and they're probably good today. They're a little bit softer, perhaps, but I thought his comments
Is that
from
your
yesterday.
direction?
I thought his comments yesterday were pretty accurate. I don't see any way that a country in Russia's position could allow them, just in their position, could allow them to join NATO. I don't see that happening. And long before President Putin, Russia was very strong on the fact that I believe that's the reason the war started, because Biden went out and said that they could join NATO, and he shouldn't.